Hi, and welcome to Live with OAIB, a conversation where we discuss critical HR challenges that leaders are facing today. We use our 40 plus years of experience in HR, consulting, and executive coaching to go deep on topics that are top of mind but are often avoided. Thanks for joining us today. Today's a special day because we're offering SHRM certification credits. So, OAIB is approved by SHRM to offer professional development credits or PDCs for the SHRM certification program for the SHRM CP and the SHRM SCP. Attendees must view the presentation in its entirety to receive the SHRM activity code. You can claim this program for other kinds of HR certification as well, but you'll need to provide the details to that certifying body. We only are pre-approved for codes for SHRM certification. Hi, I'm Latanya Roberts, COO, Executive Coach, and Human Capital Strategist. I'm a true integrator that takes a holistic approach to turn your vision of the organization for yourself or for the organization or yourself into solutions that create inclusive cultures where all not only feel but know that they belong and can thrive. My superpower has been the ability to help my clients clearly articulate their needs and goals and then break them down into bite sized, actionable steps that don't overwhelm them. Tawana?
Good afternoon. My name is Tawana Bhagwat. I am the CEO and Principal Consultant for OAIB. I'm a visionary who believes in the power and promise of equity. I help organizations become places where everyone has a deep sense of belonging. I cut through the background noise and coach individuals and groups, but especially leaders, to make a mindset shift, starting with them being their authentic selves, aligning with their purpose, and being rooted in their own personal power. I would say my superhero power is helping people become aware of their helping people become aware of their blind spots so that they can put the oxygen mask on themselves and then make others feel safe, heard, and inspired. Okay, so today's discussion is a good one. I'm excited. Latanya, how about you share with everyone what we will be covering today?
Sure. So we're looking at this blog that you wrote called Leading with Humanity. So we're going to go a little bit deeper on that particular blog where you start to talk about a story that you've had with one of the people that we coach here at OAIB. What inspired you to write that blog?
Yeah, I got to give a little background before we jump into this. We have lots of clients in the nonprofit sector that are doing amazing, I would say heroic work around the world. At the core of their work is the mission of helping the underdeveloped and less fortunate in countries that do not have the freedom or liberties, let alone resources that America has. And on the for profit side, we support organizations that are providing services or creating widgets or gadgets to help life better, to help make life better and more comfortable to their consumers. But all are focused on the deadline, the bottom line, the strategies. And I am feeling like there has been a loss of sight of their most valuable asset, and that's the people. It feels sterile, heartless, and a bit robotic. Can I say feel? Because there's no room in the workplace for this word. You can't prove feelings. It's just about numbers, deadlines, quotas, and profit. So everyone is striving to do it better, quicker, with less resources. And their employees are feeling it because they are treated inhumanely. I mean, the ones that are contributing or making the difference, whether in America or around the world. Huh, go figure. With all the greatness that's happening in the organization, they are feeling as if they're not valued. This has bothered me because I've seen both sides, the pressure of the leaders to the downtrodden staff members. To some degree, all are not feeling value, but they all are making a huge impact. So I was talking one day to a leader about the discourse and how the word humanity gets kicked around all the time. And I said, just, out of the blue, we need to lead with humanity, and that'll fix a lot of our problems. I can honestly tell you that I've done lots of research since I put this blog out and have had several inflection points for myself. So I thought this was a great topic for the end of the year in hopes that people will do some reflecting over the holiday break and incorporate some of these ideas that we will share today.
That's good. And I know that's a topic that we've come across a lot with our
Absolutely.
clients lately, leading with humanity. So break that down for me. What does that really mean when we say, let's lead with humanity?
So let's start with the definition. So as you look at this slide, and I would say that humanity and leadership are in partnership with each other, right?
Hmm.
It takes the best part of ourselves, our diversity, our backgrounds, our distinct gifts, and it merges them together to complement each other. And I found this definition and I was like, that's so true, right? When it speaks to the partnership between leading and humanity. And I would say it requires purpose and care in our actions, right? How we interact with one another. I would say that it also requires you to choose to rethink how we connect with people that we work with, that we lead, that we care for, and putting their needs alongside ours. You notice I didn't say putting their needs first, but one could say that's part of it, but putting them alongside ours as to say that all of us are important and play a critical role. But there's some core, I would say, characteristics that I'm hoping that we share today that will help us think about what's at the root of that. And for me, it's leading with compassion, with empathy, and with respect. But let's not forget, at the heart of it, I would say, is also curiosity.
Hmm.
That's an unassuming quality that helps us to understand ourselves and each other better, and which we can use to adjust our response and actions as leaders. So I want to push this concept forward today around us constantly rethinking how we connect, how we respond, how we show care for one another as we say we're leading with humanity.
I love that. And so as you're talking, I'm think one word really stood out to me, and that's the word rethinking.
Yeah.
Right? Rethinking the unlearning of all the things that we were taught to do when we come into the workplace. Put your feelings aside, stick to the facts,
Mhm.
focus on the mission, right? So, of course, as we go through this unlearning, what are some of those challenges that may come up when people are trying to make that mental shift to leading with humanity?
Mm. So that's such a good question, right? Because it's right, but not an easy approach or the easiest one, right? I would say another challenge that people may run across is because it requires you to dig deep, to
Mm.
question yourself, and to some degree be exposed to not having all the answers. There's this rule: leaders must know it all. And if you don't, you dare not expose yourself to not knowing. There is also a common challenge around being authentic and vulnerable because it scares many people, but leaders in particular. Um, you also may be perceived as weak, sometimes caring too much. And this style is typically frowned upon because there is some beliefs in today's world, I would call it old school, if I was really honest, that says this approach is not necessarily the one that drives results. And I would say drive results or drive people to get
Mm.
results. And do we really want to be about driving people?
I love that. So, yes, there's going to be challenges, but we wouldn't be talking about leading with humanity if there weren't some clear benefits to doing it. So, what are the impacts of a person or an organization that is making that cultural shift to leading with humanity?
Another great question. I really spent some time thinking about if organizations had leaders that was leading with humanity, what type of organization would we have? And I would say, one, the team trusts you to make the right choices on their behalf. I would also say they believe that you genuinely have their best interests at heart, right?
Mhm.
It creates open lines of communication. But more importantly for me, it speaks to creating this foundational culture of belonging, which you hear us reference or refer to all the time. But where people are curious, right? And that it's expected and accepted, where diversity is valued regardless of your difference, you find a way to leverage that.
Mhm.
And this one for me is that leadership is an act of service and privilege, not a position of status. So, get over yourself and your title. And I
Mhm.
want to say that again because it's super important. When you're in leadership, you should feel that it's an honor, right? It's an act of serving those that are serving the mission, that are creating, that are innovating, that are producing. And you have an opportunity or the privilege to inspire and motivate. I feel like this also creates a healthy respect of authority and hierarchy. But most importantly, there are leaders at every level in the organization, regardless of position and power. Should I go on? Because I hope that you are taking away that there is something to be said when you show up as caring, when you show up in collaboration, and when you show up being curious about the people that you work with,
Mhm.
and you are inquiring about the care, their thought process, what they value, what they are inspired to be and do within the organization, and for that matter, outside.
Absolutely. It reminds me of childhood, just the innocence of childhood and that natural curiosity of just wanting to get to know people.
Right.
And we grow up and we kind of forget how to do those things. So, as everyone is listening to Tawana speak about the challenges, but also the many benefits of leading with humanity, feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat box. We'll be responding to those as well. All right. So, Tawana, what are some of the leadership styles and the specific tips that you would have for each style of leadership to switch to that operating with humanity? There's so many out there, but if you can just touch on a few, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we're going to put up a slide on this because you're absolutely correct. There are tons of them. And so I wanted to highlight five and then get into kind of one that I would love to see everyone kind of demonstrate, if you will. So, this democratic leadership, one would say that leaders make or break decisions democratically, right? So, they base their team's opinion and feedback, they take that into consideration. Now, get granted, they're the tiebreaker or have the final call, but they want to demonstrate that everyone's opinion counts. And I would tell you that this is a easily, attainable and for people to do because the benefit is it gives voice to your employees.
Mhm.
I would tell you the aristocratic leadership style would be just the opposite, right? So, this is where leaders don't really care about the opinion of their employees, they don't take it into consideration. It's a style, right, that sometimes can get in the way of truly connecting with your employees. And I would also tell you that it's not sustainable. And the reason I say that is because your employees are there not only to do service or work, but they will become the experts at what they do. So their opinion and thoughts that they have on things should matter. The next one I would say is bureaucracy leadership. This is someone that goes by the book, right? Although this leadership approach do listen to employees and their opinion, they may negate or reject it, and particularly if it's not the way the company policies say it should be. And you and I both know, as HR professionals, there's policies and then there's intent. And most people has an interpretation of what they believe the intent is.
Mhm.
And sometimes that even overshadow when people believe that they're going by the book, if you will.
Mhm.
This transactional leadership, again, very common, right? A leadership style that is based on action and reward. And I would tell you that some people are okay with that, to be quite honest, right? It's an employee or a team may receive an incentive or a bonus for achieving a target set by the company. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is wrong, but it doesn't lend itself to potentially what transformation could be, right? It's like, this is your goal, accomplish this goal. And sometimes you could become detached from the outcome because you're more attached to, when I finish this thing, I'm going to get rewarded. That may be a style that worked for some, but I do feel like it tends to take the feeling out, right? And I'm going to get this word wrong. So you got to help me with this pronunciation. I've been practicing it and I still can't say it right. What is it, Natalia?
Which one are you talking about?
Number five.
Oh, laissez faire.
Yeah, laissez faire. I got that southern tongue that creeps in there when I'm talking. But this means let them do, right? So it's least intrusive. The leaders with this approach, right? They have some authority, but for the most part, it lies with the employee.
Mhm.
It can be empowering, but I would tell you that it's limiting, right? Because as a leader, you should be investing in your employees. So, with investing in them, there's some development. You need to have some check in. You
Mhm.
can also sometimes create the wild, wild west, right? Because everyone's out doing their own thing and you're not checking in to know if they're moving in the direction of the mission, if
Mhm.
they're moving in the direction to accomplish the goals. And when you do check in, it could be a missed opportunity to redirect or pivot. So I would say, again, it's a style. But if I go to my one that I would recommend, next slide, I would say it's servant leadership. But um, I don't know if we really have adapted that language when we speak to servant, not because it's wrong, but I like to say it's conscious leadership, right? And
Mhm.
so this is a style based on desire to serve and give to your community. That in and of itself just excites me because that's at the core of who I am as a leader.
Mhm.
By putting the needs of others first, you heard me say that. I like to say first or beside yours, right? Because you're empowering people to perform at their best. Who wouldn't want to work with others that are at their peak game, right? The results that you get as a result of that are inspiring and actually make you want to be better. When members of the community see your passion, it's contagious to some degree, and
Mhm.
your commitment through your actions, they want to connect with you. So, who wouldn't want that as a leader? There's a couple of other things that I think is super important here around prioritizing servicing the greater good. So what's our mission? What are we trying to achieve? And can everyone lock arms against that? And do you see the role that you play in making sure that that comes to life? I would say employees in a servant leadership environment are more likely to feel that their voices are being heard. We talked about the benefit of creating a culture of belonging.
Mhm.
I would say a servant leader is focused on their employees, constantly working to understand them better. I personally believe that not only should leaders invest in their employees and developing them, but the employees should feel that you care. You genuinely care about their well being, that their development, that you want to see them improve and be better than under your leadership. You should want to get to know them, right? You should want to help them reach the goals that they've set for themselves, that ultimately is the goal of the company.
Mhm.
I would tell you, true leaders have servant hearts. So you notice I mentioned the word feelings at the opening of our conversation. But I also think that it's super important for leading others to know that that's emotional work.
Mhm.
True leaders have servant hearts. Leading others is emotional work. Why did you say that, Tawana? Because when you are connecting with others, you are developing a relationship. You can call it a work relationship, you can call it personal relationship, you can call it a professional relationship,
Mhm.
but you are developing a relationship. There's an emotional work that's involved in that. And that is so important. Why? Because you are attaching yourself to the success of that person, not at your own detriment, of course, but there is an investment here. So I
Mhm.
want to make sure that, because I've heard leaders say that's an emotional tax or emotional toll, Tawana. And we don't have time for that because we got to get these things done. Great push. But I would also ask the leaders that if we invested in getting to know our employees better and we understood that things that get in the way of them not being able to bring their authentic self, or that get in the way of them not being able to deliver the desired results, and we can help barrier bust for them, then that was worth the investment, at least for me.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think is really important here that you mentioned is it's about building relationships.
Absolutely.
Professional work relationships, whatever you want to call it. It's about building relationships. And part of that relationship building is being vulnerable. But that's so against what a lot of leaders, especially those that have been around for a long time, were taught, right? You leave your life
Absolutely.
at home, you don't talk about, or your work life at work, your personal life at home, and you don't bring that to the table.
You separate them
Absolutely.
completely.
Right. And so if we're telling people you have to build relationships, it requires you to be vulnerable. So how can those leaders, what advice would you give to those leaders to start that unlearning process of those old behaviors, to not share certain parts of them that they normally wouldn't share in the workplace but are so important as they continue to show up and be that leader that leads by example, has that conscious leadership, and has an expectation from their team members that they will also share with them as well?
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because whenever we talk about unlearned or unlearning behaviors, and particularly when we talk about sharing about ourselves, that
Mhm.
comes across as, oh, that's personal.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that we can share that may be deemed personal, but could help a person understand your come from state.
Mhm.
And that alone will give them insight to your thinking, your framing of things, why you move and make the decisions that you make. And so I would say we got to learn to trust your own humanity, because to some degree we compartmentalize. So
Mhm.
we go, this is personal, that doesn't go into work. This is professional, that's okay to go into work. And I would say our natural humane selves want to care, connect, and collaborate.
Right.
Want to care, collect, and collaborate. That speaks to the human side of us that we have put in another compartment to say for our personal.
Mhm.
And I would love to see more of that show up in our work environment. As a matter of fact, the workplace is calling for it.
Mhm.
You also have to be okay with not knowing or being everything to everybody. Just so you know, that's a clear sign of inauthenticity. I cannot be everything to everybody. One, I don't even know to some degree what
Right.
that is. So that is, a formula for failure right there. Practice sharing and showing your vulnerability with people you feel safe with and in a safe environment. I can honestly tell you that I know what that feels like because I have created that for my own team. And as the leader, I
Mhm.
also expect that of my team. And I say to them all the time, which they laugh at me, but I really do mean it. I say, thank you for allowing me to be psychologically safe with you and to share, I don't know. I don't know, and I'm okay with not knowing, right? But I surround
Mhm.
myself with pretty damn smart people, just so you know.
Okay.
So I'm looking for them to know. Somebody knows. And
Somebody.
I'm okay with not being that person that knows everything.
Right.
And so you got to practice that because that's a muscle that we have to relearn because we learned that that is not okay in the workforce.
Mhm.
This one for me is so important. Share from your heart, not from your head. What?
Mhm.
Did I say heart and feelings to bring into the workplace? Yes. I want you to let your heart brain lead your head first. Sometimes let your heart brain lead your head first sometimes by sharing your purpose and help others to define and unleash theirs. So we get to role model what that looks like, and then you'll see others start to share. And then there's a give and take in the exchange of relationships. I would also say lean into discomfort. Unlearning is not easy. And I won't say the older you get because that may seem like I'm stereotyping. But you know, those leaders like myself who are set in our ways, right? It is a bit uncomfortable, but I have seen and come to understand that the benefit outweighs, kind of staying stuck.
Mhm.
I would tell you what is the worst thing that could happen? How do you prepare for the worst thing that can happen? Because once you do that, then sky's the limit. Let go of those old stories or tapes and be open to creating new ones
Mhm.
because you have allowed yourself to be a bit more vulnerable. As people learn about you, you learn about them. And then I would say wash, rinse, and repeat. And that's how we continue to build muscle around that. But I wanted to share a quick tool with you as a way to help you remember that. So, as we think about leading with humanity, one of the things that we have trained on, and it's become so impactful that I thought would be helpful to share today, is share what you want, expect, or are looking for or need. What? Did you say need? Yes. I'm
Mhm.
on feelings hard today. Sorry. Right? Then create an environment, leaders, to ask questions and be asked questions. It's okay for your team to ask you questions for clarity, and you don't take that to be on the defense, right? That this is, something that's wrong or they're
Mhm.
questioning your authority. This is how we learn. Actively listen to what the other person is saying without interrupting, forming your own response, right? Or judging them. Like, why would they ask me that? There's no dumb question. We hear that all the time, but it
Mhm.
really is true. Because if I can provide some clarity to my team member that will help them move along, and then we all benefit collectively, why not? And
Absolutely.
co-create the actions you take to solve for problems, concerns, or need. So I want you to share, ask questions, listen for the response, and then take actions together. The thing that keeps us grounded is purpose, care, and curiosity. These things stop us from putting ourselves above others, but putting them beside us.
Mhm.
This is what leads to partnership, collaboration, allyship, and eliminate fear, concerns, and doubts. To me, that's at the root of how do we partner together without leading with humanity at the forefront. I hope that tool is helpful and that we'll spend some time on just reflecting on how we can do that better.
Right. Now that it is helpful, just giving people just a few nuggets on how, because that's the question we get all the
Yeah.
time. How can we do this? How do I put this in action? But also, I think what is important is the why.
Yeah.
Why do you need to do this? So, why is it so important for leaders to be authentic when they're dealing with their staff?
You know what? I believe wholeheartedly in being authentic, showing up as who you are. And I recognize that a lot of people have to learn who they are in the workplace because, again, we have compartmentalized that. But
Hmm.
I go back to these things help us be grounded in purpose, care, and curiosity. I would also say they lead to better partnerships, better collaboration. We get to give voice to the voiceless and show up as allies.
Hmm.
Also, there's a fear of I don't want people to know who I am. They're going to use this information against me, right? If this is who you are, a happy, energetic person, but you believe that that is not acceptable in your environment, then get curious.
Hmm.
Find out why. Maybe that's not the culture for you. I know that's scary. I'm not telling anyone to quit their job, but I am saying there is something to be said when you cannot bring your authentic self to work.
Right.
There is something to be said when you believe that the core of who you are will not be accepted.
Right. And a lot of times when we're having these conversations, people focus on the most senior level of leadership, right?
Mm,
That C suite, the executive team. But also, those are the people that are the most far removed from the
mhm,
people that are actually doing the work. So there's more interaction with your middle managers and your senior managers.
mhm.
What can the more executive or senior level leadership do to start to help their senior managers and their middle managers start to make that shift?
Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough. Role model, role model, role model, role model. I mean, because everyone is looking up for the example
Hmm.
of what's acceptable. How did they get there? What did they do so that I can mimic that, so that I can have that higher position? So if they see the leaders having all the answers, right? If they see the leaders being very firm in their decision and not being flexible, if they see leaders that are not curious to inquire or also to question themselves, right? If they see leaders not being open to rethink their decision because maybe they have additional data, right? Maybe they did not understand the entire picture. Maybe they needed to talk to middle management or those in lower in the organization that we would call subject matter experts,
Mhm,
those people that are on the floor, on the assembly line, right? Those that are executing the day to day in the grassroots community. If leaders will lend themselves to be more open to getting data at the lowest level,
mhm,
amplifying voices when they do get that data. So to show openness, to show collaboration, to show vulnerability of bringing their authentic self, to admitting what they don't know, but that they're open to learn more. Those are things that I believe leaders are responsible for doing, and then having an expectation of call it that middle management to role model what they're seeing, and then we keep going down further into the organization. It's refreshing to see.
it is, and earlier we talked about some of the challenges that may arise when you are leading with humanity, but let's take it a step further. So we're talking about the executive team role modeling down
Mhm.
to the senior managers and then the middle managers. What are some of those challenges that they may face when they're working with their team members and trying to make that shift and change the culture and change how they operate to lead
Yeah.
more with humanity?
Yeah, I would say they will experience some of the same challenges, right? Where they translate to mean to be that someone may believe that they're a weak leader, that they can be ran over because they're showing up with care, right? That has been the one that I've heard the most that people say they're concerned about. The other piece is they're like, Tawana, I don't know about this vulnerability piece, right? That I'm a private person, right? I separate work and home. I don't feel that people need to get to know me, that know that side of me in order to work with me. And I say that as part of being authentic is being comfortable with what part of you want to share, right? But I would also say be authentic in that, because I would say that those that have said that to me, they don't even own that, right? They don't go, "Hey, let me just share with you that this is how I present is actually who I am. I'm most comfortable when I'm having this level of conversation. When you share with me about your family and your children and what they do, I think that's awesome. But I'm not comfortable sharing those things because how I was brought up. But that doesn't mean I frown on you for sharing. That was a very transparent and open conversation. You'll actually get more respect from the organization or those that you're talking to than to just show up and it's a one-sided conversation. It sometimes can come across as a turn off or a bit cold, or people may describe it as being unapproachable, right? When they're trying to connect with the person on an human level, right? Because our work, for some people, defines them. I would hope that that's not the case for everyone. And there's more to all of us than the last project we did, the last sale we made, the last quota we made. And that's what I believe is a challenge, but
Mhm.
speaks to the benefit of leaning in because we're unlearning. And by the way, that was actually the profile that was given to us. And I say us because I include myself in that, for what work and being professional and not crossing those lines and mixing personal and professional together. That was the formula that was given. But as we talked about, there's several generations in the workplace, and
Yes.
I would tell you the younger generation, that's just not how they're built, and they're rejecting it, and they're also requiring it of the more seasoned generations as they think about managing them and connecting in a very different way.
Mhm. Absolutely. So we've talked about the what, we've talked about the how and the why. Let's get into when.
Mm,
What are some examples or situations for those that need to know what, okay, Tawana, how, when do I actually do this?
mm.
Right. And we're all about intentional
Come
actions.
on.
Okay. So being very intentional in what you're doing. So, what are some
Mhm.
examples or situations that leaders should be very intentional about leading with humanity?
That is such a great question because I am by no means trying to have people to pretend to care or pretend to be curious about what your colleagues or direct reports, right? Or staff members are doing. Because if that's not your authentic self, then that is not who you should try to show up as. So I wanted to just start there. But I
Okay.
do believe that there should be intentionality behind everything. That's why you keep hearing me say care, because that's at the root of it, right? But I
Mhm.
would say think about big decisions, right? Think about selection of leaders over a team. Think about the strategy work that you're doing. Is the next 5 years of strategy would say that we're going to cut, our workforce, but yet we're going to triple our numbers in sales, in productivity, in innovation, because that in and of itself would not have us to come across as caring,
Mhm.
because we will be driving our most valuable asset, which is our people, versus being creative and looking at other ways in which we can still obtain growth, but not kill our folks. And I
Right.
say it just like that because that's what it translates to, right? I would also say, think about it when you're doing corrective action. There's some bad behavior that's happening in the organization, and people need to be corrected and held accountable. Wholeheartedly agree.
Mhm.
But how do we do that in a way that it feels ethical? It's fair, right? It's predictable because people know the policy on these things, and we can go back and point to where there was a misstep and it wasn't something that was just made up, and that they can see that we're reliable because we continue to be consistent with how we're managing those things. And we do an investigation to get all the data, to understand the situation and circumstances. And we take all those things into account when we're making a decision. And I would say, last but not least, when we're in a crisis. When we're in a crisis, whether it's loss of funder, whether it's a shutdown of site, whether it's to end a contract, that may not be going so well, those are times where we got to dig deep. We need to question our decision making, understand who's being impacted, start from a place of care, collaborate with those that are or potentially could be impacted, be honest and transparent, right? And then be curious. You keep hearing me say this word, curiosity, because curiosity leads us to ask questions to make sure we understand. And then try to lean forward, show up, and make the best decision possible, knowing that we may not always get it right. So we got to own our stuff if we misstep in that process.
I love the last part of what you were describing. It reminds me of the article, the blog itself, because in the blog, you talk about a very specific scenario of how
Yeah.
this actually plays out. And I would love to kind of role play it so that people can really make the connection. All the visual people like me, I need to see it
Mhm.
in my head. Right. So I'm going to set the stage, and Tawana, you're going to act as that manager in this position. I'm going to be that executive delivering the message. So to set the stage, there's a team, international nonprofit that relies on donors for their funding. They pay for the majority of the salaries of the people. There's a team member who made a mistake and upset the donor. So now the organization is at risk depending on how the person is feeling. Because let's be real, people react off emotions, feeling, and a lot of times ego, especially when they
Yeah,
have the money, right?
about the
So
ego.
the ego. So the organization is at risk for potentially losing the funding, which accounts again for a large part of the salaries of this staff. Now, the executive team, I'm coming to you, Tawana, and I'm saying, hey, continue smiling. Don't scare the people. Let them to continue on, because at the end of the day, we still have work to do.
Mhm.
But from a manager's perspective, Tawana, how are you feeling in this situation?
Yeah, I would say I'm torn. Torn because we have to right a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand impact that the funder could, at the end of the day, take the money back. And if that occurs, I'll have a team that's out of a job, including myself for that matter. But most times, manager salaries are a portion of that because managers are cutting across different projects, right? So most times managers may be saved, right? And in this case, I'm concerned about my team. And because it is my team, I also have to take some accountability. So I would tell you that the way we would coach our clients, and in this blog, how I coach them, was that we have to be transparent, right? And share as much information as we can. We have to fix or right the wrong, the misstep, and we're doing that together. And I also feel a responsibility, a level of responsibility to help the team understand what the worst case scenario could be so that we can plan accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that to me, I'm sorry, one
Good.
other piece, and that to me is super important because I am showing up in my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
I am showing up with care first, right? I am showing up wanting to collaborate on the solution with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to understand where leadership is. So I'm asking them tons of questions as well, because I also want to have certainty, or some level of certainty, let me say,
Mm-hmm.
that leadership has my team back,
Right.
right? I want to be able to go to my team and say, we missed out. No pointing the fingers as a collective. And I've spoken to leadership, and here's what I believe they will support us. Or even to say they have some concern, right? And here's what we believe the solution is. And let's work through that. And then we'll revisit the conversation
Mm-hmm.
with the leaders. But let's fix this.
Right. And I think what's important about this scenario, and you wrote so well in the blog, is that you potentially have to serve two different stakeholder
Oh
groups,
yeah.
right? And you have to make sure that you can come up with a way, and really three if you include yourself in the
Hmm.
scenario. It's meeting the needs of everyone while still creating the optimal outcome,
Right.
right? The executives, they want to make sure that the team is still going, the morale is still up, you're still getting the work done. But the people, they want to know what's happening,
That's
what's
right.
going on. Everyone, we always joke about what's in it for me. That
Hmm.
is the question that has to be answered no matter who you're dealing with, whether you're the executive, the manager, or the team. What's in it for me? How does this impact me? And how can I walk away in a situation where I feel like I'm being taken care of? And as that leader, when you're leading with humanity, that's what you're juggling with while still satisfying your own needs. So going back to not necessarily putting the people before you, but making sure you're walking alongside with all
Absolutely.
of those groups.
Put their needs right beside yours.
Absolutely.
And in some cases, a servant leader, a conscious leader, will put their team needs before theirs.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not asking anyone to subscribe to sacrifice self. I open up by saying I encourage everyone to put the oxygen mask on themselves first. I honestly and truthfully believe that I am a better version of myself when I can breathe.
Right. Absolutely. And we talked about that in our live earlier this month about burnout, because the
Absolutely.
result of that is you're burning out when you aren't taking your needs into consideration as well. So there's a lot of positive impacts that leading with humanity can have on advancing the strategic direction, the goals of the organization.
Mhm.
Can you speak to a little bit to that?
So I would say that when we're talking about the benefits of leading with humanity, I even though there may be challenges or things that people say will be tough,
Hmm.
those are growth opportunities, right? But I can honestly tell you that haven't had to be in organizations where that was not the case. And
Hmm.
those leadership styles that I described, I've lived under all of them. And now being a leader of an organization where I get to set the culture and partner with my team, um, for me, there's only one choice, and that's for me
Hmm.
and for the organization I'm in and what we do. And so I struggle to tell you what could be, not so beneficial from leading with humanity,
Hmm.
leading with your heart, right? Being open to connecting, being open to possibilities. I just don't have, Latanya, to be quite honest. Here I am again. I'm so okay with not knowing. 'Cause I've experienced all of those, and they
Right.
are not, something that I would encourage people to not try, at
Right.
least try and find their own humanity. I started out by saying you got to trust your humanity. But what I will tell you, though, is that I do believe that there's some attributes to being a humane leader. And I
Hmm.
think that's much more important for people to understand, because I believe that we all can adopt these attributes. So we put a couple together that I just think is super important, right? And the first one is that a humane leader is clear about the work that they are doing. You understand the mission, you understand the purpose, right? You know why you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You understand the impact. I would tell you, secondly, is that you enable others, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to not to be the smartest person in the room and that everyone is bringing their expertise to the table, right? That they are focused on what their work brings and how they are contributing. And I find that when I see the team operating at that level because they feel enabled to do so, sky's the limit for to what we can do together. I would tell you that a humane leader listens, asks a question, and genuinely want to know what people are thinking,
Mm-hmm.
how they're feeling about a particular thing. It actually builds this open line of communication that becomes an exchange versus sometimes can feel like a dictation. You will do, therefore. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think the other thing too is that they don't pay lip service to consultation, so constantly consulting, but instead they hear the thoughts, right? They hear the opinions and they take them into account for action. I would tell you they lead by example, which you heard me say over and over again. I won't, beat a dead horse, but I would also tell you though that they're practical. They lead by example, but they're practical, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do? What do we need to do? How are we going to do it? What makes sense in our current reality? Those things become so important. I love number five. They are self aware, right? They have a level of humility about how they move, right? They are prepared to look at their part and whatever has happened or will happen, what goes wrong, what goes right. And that was back to that scenario that we just referenced, where I would say to you, the leader didn't point the finger. We as a team, right? And we as a team misstep and we as a team will fix it. And then a leader also does some reflecting on how I can best support my team to move through this because they have faith in their capability to do great work. And then number six, they stay flexible and curious.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, at the very heart of leading with humanity is curiosity. And you've heard me say this, right? And I just want to continue to highlight that I'm finding this about myself. This is a pivot point for me, is that it's an unassuming quality that helps us understand ourselves and each other better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was dropped into the notes here. I would tell you, and this in particular is what will have us to adjust our response and actions as leaders. That to me speaks to flexibility. That to me speaks to being curious and that I'm willing to adjust
Mm-hmm.
with a better understanding. And you don't get that through dictatorship, right? You get that through connecting, staying engaged, to being creative, to asking questions, to partnering. So again, I say care, collaboration, curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Should have put that on the slide too. Said it like 15 times.
It's all good. So I would be remiss if I do not bring in the current situation, the pandemic, the great
Yeah.
stand up, right? How has that impacted the need to lead with humanity?
First, we lack connection, right?
Mhm.
So therefore we're missing that sense of belonging. I mean, physically, we're not together,
Mhm.
right? So there's no energy exchange and we are social beings. I would tell you that there is an overwhelming mindset that everyone is in the same boat, so deal with it, right? Like oh, I got COVID. You're like, yeah, I've had it 15 times, right? Like, whatever. No, it hits people very differently. And
Mhm.
I would tell you, as a result of that, empathy has gone out the window and care
Mhm.
has left the building in every sense of the words. So I am pleading with leaders, um, because they're coming across as looking heartless because they have conformed to being in control,
Mhm.
to having to be everything to everybody, right? To making firm decisions and sticking with them. And so they don't look weak or vulnerable.
Mhm.
I believe that that was a time that that might have been real, and we've moved past that. This pandemic has taken a toll on us around the world. So I don't think that there's a special group per se, but I
Mhm.
will tell you that we are seeing tons of anxiety and stress and burnout, and people are having to relearn how to socialize, how to
Mhm.
be among people again, although it's something that they yearn. So I would say the days of power, control, secrecy, silos are gone, leaders. That is
Mhm.
not Tawana saying you got to share everything with everyone, because that's not the case. And we all know that.
Mhm.
But what I will say to you, as we've been taught and given a profile for what that looked like, that no longer serves us. Success is in the essence of the people.
Mhm.
People are our most valuable asset, and how they communicate, connect, and collaborate with character. With character,
Yep. Love that.
right? People are the link to our humanity, just in case we forgot. So I'm asking everyone to lead from within,
Mhm.
right? That's different, huh? Lead from within. So put the importance of humanity back into your leadership and show others how their business can grow, succeed in profitability and productivity, and in more profound ways than I think we've ever considered. The people have spoken, right? We got to put humanity back in leadership, or we will continue to see a mass exodus.
Absolutely.
Great resignation, which I call the great stand up, is real. So I have one last call to action as we get to our time. Last slide. Right here. Thank you. So, if we think about how we can begin on this journey around humanity, I would tell you, think about, what are you willing to let go of? Some old stories, some old tapes about how it's supposed to be, right? Ask yourself, what's in the way of me being vulnerable with my, staff, with my colleagues, with the team. I would also ask you to think about, what do you need and from whom, in order for you to be a bit more vulnerable than you have been
Mhm.
in the past. And I said this, and I'll close with this: true leaders have a servant heart. Leading others is emotional work. Are you willing to do the work?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tawana. I love that blog that you wrote, Leading with Humanity, and just have really had a chance to see how it's been so important in all of the leadership conversations that we've been having as of lately. And then going into the next year, it's going to be even more important. So embracing that leading with humanity. And I can't wait to see part 2 of the blog, just
Yes,
based
part
on
two is coming.
it's coming. Yeah, based on what we've been experiencing and dealing with, there definitely has to be a part 2. So thank you all for listening in today as we've talked about leading with humanity. We hope that you got some great tools and tips on how you can move forward and start to make that mental shift and start to work with your teams. And as always, we would love to be a part of that journey with you. So if that is something that you're interested in, please do go to our website at www.oaib.org. Again, that's www.oaib.org, and you can get in touch with us. And also remember today's session, we are giving away SHRM PDC. So OAIB is approved by SHRM to offer PDCs for the SHRM CP and the SHRM SCP. This session has been pre-approved for one PDC. You can claim recertification credit with program code 22-Z as in zebra, W as in Washington, F as in Frank, K as in kite, N as in Nancy. Again, 22-ZWFKN. It is important that you keep track of the sessions that you view, as OAIB will not be able to provide you with a record of the sessions you've attended today. We look forward to seeing you all after the start of the year for our next Live with OAIB. Go ahead and tell a friend, leave a question or a comment in the chat, and we'll be sure to respond to that by the end of the week. Have a great day, y'all.
Thank you.